now request our Dean, Professor Ray, to please welcome the guest for the leadership series. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. We always talk about diversity in an MBA program, and I said personality, Dr. Ajay Kumar. Dr. Kumar did his MBBS from Jipmar, Pondicherry, not like us, he's actually a doctor. Thereafter, he served as an IPS officer for 10 years, 86 to 96. At this juncture, with your permission of course, I am strongly tempted to say what I heard when I joined as a young faculty at Xlri, way back in early 90s. All of you have seen Sholay, no? So with due apologies to Sholay, it was a common myth that time, which was floating around, that something to describe him. दूर दूर गांव में जब डाकुओं भौंकते हैं, उनके बाप बोलते हैं, बच्चे चुप हो जा, नहीं तो अजय कुमार आ जाएंगे. The fearless SP who made us feel safe. Later, when I met him at Xlri, instead of the fearless SP, I discovered a man who was humility personified. This is Dr. Ajay Kumar. He also holds a postgraduate diploma in business administration, hospital administration, and preventive and promotional healthcare. In fact, I just recently learned from Father Tony that he had just missed from becoming an Excel alumni. He actually was offered, but before he could join, I think Tata Motors had offered him a job. He has managed large business operations, Apollo Hospitals, Cummins, Tata Sons. Dr. Ajay Kumar is not only a successful CEO, but also a caring politician and an effective parliamentarian, trying to incorporate the best practice of business management into politics. It's a pleasure to have such a multidimensional personality amongst us. I now invite Dr. Kumar to share his thoughts on the role of MBA in politics. Thank you.
First of all, I'm extremely honored to be in Xlri, and correctly so, because I tried to seek admission and I couldn't pursue the course, so this is the closest I think I can get to getting Xlri guys to listen to me. I just want to share with you that the fundamental couple of things. First of all, I would rather let it be more interactive. And you can stop here anytime and if you feel so. I have a simple perspective in life that is, but Indian politics is an interesting topic. But I just want to say that the fundamental issue which you see across in the different parliamentary forums or in the space of public sphere, one thing which strikes me glaringly is total lack of process and systems. It's very easy. When educated people sit across and debate inside, saying that why there no process and system, and why is the political class not so aware of the political, why are they not so organized, why don't they have very clear-cut objectives, management objectives, and process flow, etc., etc. But you need to understand fundamentally why it doesn't happen, and that's important for us to understand. And the whole reason why this political space is so chaotic, because to get elected, the process of election is very scary for all of you who are sitting in this room. If you ever attempt to fight an election, you will, by and large, I think there will be only one or two guys who will be out of a group of 300, 400 who will have the perseverance and the ability to say that, listen, I'm not going to let go. But if you get into a political space and get into an election process, the whole methodology of election, the different kinds of people you interact with, by and large it is not it doesn't suit the middle class mind. It actually doesn't suit the middle class mind, because you've been brought up in different methods, you're not comfortable with chaos, you're not comfortable with somebody ringing you up at 2 in the morning and saying, I was checking if your phone was working. No, seriously, I made this mistake of giving my mobile number on the newspaper, and I got calls at 3 in the morning saying, Sansad Mahoday, how are you doing? I said, fine, yahi number hai aapka? I said, haan, theek hai. And they put the phone on. And there's so many times, and so that's one. So the political system, so it throws in the system of selection of political processes right now in the Indian politics is difficult. But I sense something which is wonderful happening in the country, and that's one thing when I come in the hope, is that there's an underlying current of change which I'll share with you as I develop this theme. But the issue is, why do the political class are different? Because the Lok Sabha can only elect people who come through a political process which actually is the survival of the fittest in a very, very Machiavellian way. It's a very, very difficult way in which you can rise from the MLA or MP processes. And when you see people like the generation next, which they keep calling in Congress, which is father's constituency given to the son. So it cannot be a generation X at all, actually speaking, because it's Milan Deora is son of Murli Deora, Huda is the son of Bhupendra Huda, Dipendra Huda, Jyotiraj Scindia, son of Madhavara. So the generation X and all is a misnomer. It's basically father's legacy, passed on like a private-owned company to the children, etc. But otherwise, you rarely find, if you find anybody who comes to the political system, it is extremely difficult because the method of selection is very difficult. And guys who have come from, your kind of background will find it very difficult. So that's very difficult for you guys to enter. So it's impossible to get good people, right? The second part is when you look at the Rajya Sabha, then you have all these, it used to never be, Rajya Sabha had some amount of, clarity at least in the earliest, but now you have lots of people with money who get into the Rajya Sabha. I'll come out the other challenges. So Rajya Sabha has got some intelligent guys, some business degree guys, some intelligent people, strategists, etc. But we have no touch with the local roots here. So they're totally apolitical animals. And if you see, some of the way this Anna Hazare agitation was handled, it was handled mostly by the Rajya Sabha guys. And Mr. Sibal is a Lok Sabha guy, but with a Rajya Sabha mindset. So they're politically totally what you call wrong stepping every time, because they don't come through the process which accepts you, sharpens your political skills. So the crisis in the country is you have Lok Sabha churning out people from bottom up, by and large, who come to this struggle. So his visions are extremely limited, genuinely limited. Genuinely limited. They have no understanding of processes, systems, monitoring. I just come from a monitoring, 3 hours of sitting with the Deputy Commissioner on monitoring government projects and how we're doing. And most of the time, the discussions at the political level was individual projects. We were not saying that how do we drill down the National Rural Employment Guarantee Program? How do we ensure effectiveness? So the issue was, hey, this village doesn't have it, this doesn't have it. So the Lok Sabha, the MLA class doesn't have the ability to think. The Rajya Sabha doesn't, or so-called the Rajya Sabha, because most of the assemblies don't have what they call as the Legislative Council, has the ability to think, but doesn't have the political weight or the respect. That's not right. I'll switch that. Yeah. So it doesn't have the. So that's the problem. Now the question comes is, what's changing in the country? One of the major issues which I fundamentally believe is that the political system can get people from XLRIs and bright-eyed boys and girls with with genuinely desire to change this country, and it's critically important. If the political system becomes less expensive, then the roles of you can even probably walk in with a company like India Against Corruption, or a organization like that can fight elections sometime in the future if they think so. You can be independent. Maybe the political parties like Congress and BJP will change. And I'll come back to why I got a chance and how it happened and how fortuitous it was, and how you think that most of the people assume that that I went, I fought, and I won, and that's the story. And I'll tell you how wrong that would be. It's been a you've never seen a more political failure than me, and I'm not being humble or facetious. I'm being genuinely serious about it. But I'll explain to you the personal example in my story. The political system, if it becomes cheaper to fight elections, then irrespective of political banner, if you work in the social space, the chance of you getting elected is high. And one of the most expensive political cost, I just want to ask this, because since you guys, do you have any ideas of what's the single most expensive election activity, one activity which happens Which is the most expensive in your analysis? Anybody wants to?
Transportation.
No, I'm not saying getting a ticket and bribing is a different aspect, but I'm saying an actual expenditure. Yeah, getting a ticket. Sorry?
Transportation.
See, that just shows that none of you fought elections. The single most expensive stuff is to put the polling agent in the day of elections. It costs approximately, some people spend 2,000 bucks, some people, the poor guys like us don't spend money. Rest of them spend 2,000 bucks, some spend 5,000 rupees per booth. 5,000 into 1,500 booth is 45 lakh rupees. The government of India says officially you spend 40 lakh rupees. It's everybody's public knowledge that the people spend much more. We had no money, we didn't spend. Now that kind of money, and I'll tell you a story of a personal example. When I was fighting the election, you see, I thought I could raise money easy because I thought I had a lot of goodwill in the city and a lot of goodwill across. I helped a lot of people genuinely in pursuit of my job and had a lot of good friends who were very, what you call, financially very, very well off. But when you're fighting an election, you actually start, understanding when friends don't pick up phones and, they, turn off into silent and, or it gets diverted to a fax number. Seriously. So I was in this position trying to raise money and fight elections with no money, and so you're campaigning and you're raising money. And it's on 20th of, I still remember, 20th of June, no money, running short, you're not able to pay for the petrol. And you're not even able to get the basics in place, and it's really frightening. So I ring up my wife, who's a civil servant, and I say, listen, I'm getting tired of this. It's just impossible to raise money. And minimal money, is to keep your minimal vehicles running, etc., etc. So my wife said, don't worry, I'll organize something. So I said, well, she's going to do something. So next day, through this Federal Express, I get this courier we are a joint property holders of a flat in Ashana. And she said, sell it. She said, sell the house. So I said, so I rang her up and said, yeah, okay, you want me to sell this house? So she said, yeah. So I said, look, if you lose, you will make another one, right? And if you win, you don't need one. So that made a lot of sense. So I nearly sold my house. But fortunately, some people heard about my attempt to sell the house, and then slowly, small amounts of money started trickling, and so we were able to, get onto the day of election on assisted ventilation, and we survived. We really survived till then. But so I've been trying to pursue the government of India is to ban polling agents, because the election commission now has started distributing, and I don't know if you know what the polling agent does. Anybody aware of what the polling agent does? How many of you voted actually? So you've never met this guy called polling agent? He's a guy who stays there with the party flag and he makes your parcha. Okay, you see? Correct. He'll help you out. Once he helps you, the tendency to vote for that party is very, very high. It's psychological. A guy who comes to your home and says, boss, because you think, my matdan isn't going to make a difference, my vote is not going to change the world. And it can have a terrible negative impact in the electoral process. You see, we as Indians, we feel very obliged to kindness. So somebody gives us a slip of paper. We feel very nice, the poor chap. Let me give him a vote. And that's why certain national parties have done it very, very well. And that is a root cause when an independent guy can never make it. So you need to understand why you guys can never make it if you're independent. You only see two independent. There's only one independent guy, actually two independent guys in this whole of this present Lok Sabha. One is Om Prakash Yadav, a friend of mine from Purnia. A friend because after I joined the parliament, but I know about him. Remarkable story. But it's impossible for an independent guy to win. It's impossible, at least in an MP election. MLA election, if you work for some time, probably the 30,000-40,000 votes you can garner. But in a Lok Sabha election, genuinely is, if you've done it, it's like getting the first job in Goldman Sachs for you guys. Yes. The rest of you smiling at the rest of the guys, right? So that's how it is. So it's impossible for an independent, and that's the electoral process. So we're trying to, if you're able to reduce the money amount, then there is a solid chance for young people from Xlri and IIMs and the IITs and everybody else to come in. The other thing which is happening, which is happening interestingly, is politically you need to understand what's happened to this country, and then I'll come to MPA's role in it. In 1950s, the politicians were genuinely concerned about the country. You had good leaders, irrespective of their philosophy. Okay, now you might say, in hindsight, Pandit Nehru was wrong, and that's a a view which everybody has a right to hold it or not to hold it, because on hindsight vision is 20 by 20. But irrespective of that, the intention was genuinely honorable. Then in 60s and 70s, what happened was Indira Gandhi's period was happened, corruption, minor corruption started, and politicians became corrupt. But the civil services and the government servants were not dishonest, not desperate. Because I come from a civil service family, my dad was in the foreign service. And it was unheard of that anybody would be dishonest. Genuinely, it was looked down upon, you didn't go to their house. In the 80s, when I joined the service, the civil servants and the politicians started getting reasonably corrupt. But the amount of money was not much here, by today's standards, because there was no liberalization. So seriously, I mean, the liberalization helped everybody. When the liberalization came in, when the liberalization came in, then the civil servants and the politicians started seeing money which is unbelievable. I mean, if you're sitting in this room and happy with your, with your 50, 60, 80 lakh salaries, believe me, what these guys make in a deal, will make all of your lifetime efforts and seem so small because they don't talk. And the sheer shamelessness and the robbery, it's insane. They quote a number which you can't even imagine. They look at a vehicle and say, okay, please send it to my house. I like it. It's a Bentley. Oh, it's a nice car. Just deliver it. No, seriously, this is how the conversations happen. I'm serious about it. Because the government servant and the politicians had now the right to parcel national treasure, or national resources. They decided on the spectrum, they decided on the mining, they decided on the land. Noida is a very shameful, even everything else, from Commonwealth, everything else, but even if you look at it across the spectrum, you suddenly have private, JP Group having a lot of respect for it, and we need to speak blunt, but at the end of the day, how can you acquire farmers' land for building multi-story flats here? Because the Acquisition Land Act said you can acquire land for national purpose, and I left it. The government can acquire land. The government can acquire land for nationally imported objectives, something to that effect. As public interest, that's the word. Sorry, sir. That's it. So land got acquired. So suddenly these civil servants and it's an unholy mix. It's an unholy marriage, and it's been taking this country now. And you need to break it, and that's why this Anna Hazare movement is critically important. Fundamentally, the Lokpal bill is important, but it's not going to solve a problem. The only way it is going to solve it is when you make everything in the government transparent. You need to put every file and noting on the internet. You need to put everything on reverse auctioning, or whatever you want to call it, auctioning, everything else on the net. The more you remove it, because suddenly, having policing government servants, the chance of getting caught is 1 in a million here. Genuinely, it is impossible to get caught for corruption in this country. You'll only get caught for political pressures, otherwise you'll never get caught. The CBI has got a single distinguished record of never convicting anybody for the past 30 years. I've not seen a single conviction. I'm serious. I've not seen a single conviction on corruption cases. There may be a couple of few minor ones. So the chances. So that is why it's important to good people to get it. Now what happens, the good part is that the 35 and below, people below 35, I guess is 60% if I get the demographics. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the number? It's 35 and below is somewhere around, I think, and that's not the voting people. I'm talking about 35 and below is somewhere around 55-60%. And how much is it? 51%. So 2014 it will get more and further and further. And the young people, by and large, are not influenced by the various factors which governed our times of life, that is caste. Because as urbanization, liberalization happened, the caste linkages and everything has changed, right? And then this crazy thing called cable TV here. I don't know if you know how powerful it is. You might think it is unimportant. How many of you read this book called Fakeonomics? Do you remember the cable TV story there on a single issue regarding India? Do you remember what was it about India on that book?
Even the women in villages who watch the Saas Bahu serials, they also get to see what exactly is happening outside in the world.
So, the government of India spent millions and crores of rupees for preventing female feticide, dowry death, had no impact. Suddenly this cable TV guy, shows this women-dominated serials. It's nice. And they said, listen, my daughter can be like that, and it changed the mindset. And it's actually recorded, because if you see the penetration of cable TV, and the drop in dowry and female crime against women, etc., etc., there's an EV correlation. So it's important. So these are the stuff which is happening in the country. So there is hope. I believe that we can't get lower in politics than what is right now. Seriously speaking, it can't get worse than this. I mean, but then every time I believe it can't get worse than this, we are able to find out a new bottle. And then it's okay, maybe it's but seriously, but it can't get worse, so I believe that it's going to be, so it's a good time to be in political space, you know, at least few years by the time you decide. The other point which I feel fundamentally is with educated mindsets and is critically important is, irrespective of whether you become a public representative or not, you know, you must be actively politically engaged here. Because actually speaking, we're at a time when politics actually will make or break your life in a good or a bad way. It's critically important for young minds to be politically engaged. I'm not saying that, you know, go and fight elections or do everything, because everybody may not have the mindset. But to be politically alive, you know, and you can do it through various forums. You know, you can, I mean, some do it to a candlelight march, some do it to petition. Some of you have legal backgrounds, can file writ petitions. You know, some of you can take up causes on public interest litigation. But it's important for everybody, and then you'll see the shifts where the politicians cannot ignore it anymore. And somehow I keep talking to my colleagues in the political space, okay? They're still not accepting that the ground is changing, you see. The ground is shifting. They're just not, and they're totally unaware of it. But I believe that this is the right time, whichever way you want to get involved with. And if you ask me on whether an MBA, I think in an MBA, would it help you to think logically? Yes, I guess so. I mean, it should make you think logically, structured and everything else. Hey, tell me something. All of you have got work experience? Yes. Every one of you? Yes. Oh, then it's education which is worth it, because otherwise it's most of the time. So that's very good. That's important. So business degree will help, but there are various ways in how a young MBA can be involved politically. Even if you don't want to get engaged right now, is to get associated with a decent political movement. You know, when I'm asked this question, listen, I'm a young MBA student, I need to earn a bread and butter, right? How do I get into politics? You can get involved in various social causes. You can actually get involved with certain political people who you believe are decent. I mean, some of them are doing a good job. Like Sandeep Dixit is a nice guy. He's got good views. He's an interesting guy. You can work on weekends. You can go to the Bharatiya Janata Party or the Congress or somebody else and say, listen, let me create a performance management system for you. Seriously. So there will be different ways in which you can engage. Now, it's fundamentally important for you, and okay, now let me share with you, now coming to and I'll tell you the journey, and so that I need to explain to you. I've been trying to crack this animal of political engagement for the past 15 years. I have tried for 15 years. So if you're seeing that, you know, I made it and I succeeded, won the election, and you know, it was a cakewalk, you're totally mistaken. You're looking at a walking, most unsuccessful political activist there for 15 years. With the sheer passion, and then when I would meet the political parties and tell them that, listen, I want to work, they would look me in a strange way. So I want to serve this country, or you must be on some, you know, mind-enhancing substances here. You cannot be speaking the truth. I mean, why would anybody want to get into politics? For the 15 years I've been knocking on, you know, on reasonable and the worst part is I'm reasonably well politically connected, because I know a lot of people. I worked in the government, and despite that, because the political process, you see, looks at every one of us as a competitor. Oh, this guy will come, he's going to take my job. So it's a very, very unfriendly setup, you know. And why do political parties don't succeed is because some or the other, you know, it's strange. Okay, the Adam Smith's philosophy that, you know, individual good, if it's ethical, etc., can lead to common good, will lead to move it. In politics, it's the other way around. You know, individual bad thinking, you know, some or the other finally forms into a political party, and then, you know, party wins elections. But it's totally against what Adam Smith believed in. But it works. Because they're always sabotaging your entry into politics. Because you are competing, everybody's a competitor, there's nobody else. So you need to, so earlier, to get into politics in India, you needed a godfather. You needed a launch pad. You know. So that's the challenge I believe that those kind of stuff will reduce as time goes. But right now, you need somebody to launch you. That's the reality of life. But it's not difficult if you're a bright MBA person, kid, you want to get political activity, to find your regular way. And I'm telling you because this is, listen, you have this books, right, which says what they don't teach you in Harvard Business School. So I'm going to tell you what they don't teach you in, when guys tell you, oh, listen, you need to work in the constituency, you need to work with the people, you need to then get involved, and then you'll win the election, they'll give you a ticket, nothing like that happens. It's not going to happen. You continue to work, you'll continue to knock on doors, and every time you make a good attempt and you slog and you work for the people, nobody's going to give you a ticket. It just doesn't work in the present system. But the easy way for bright people, and I'm giving you an advice, so I recommend that after this advice you must donate it for my favorite charity project. On a lighter side, we're putting solar lights across this whole of this district, in every village center. I'll share with you what we're planning to do. But the easiest way for bright mind, guys, is to get engaged with political, either mainstream parties or mainstream political activism. It may be the Anna Hazare movement, it may be Aruna Roy, it may be the Bharatiya Janata Party, it may be the Communist Party, and I'm not saying anything. You find the right guy, you find good guys. Whichever the party background, whichever city you get into, if you're working in India, identify, if you want to get politically involved, whether it's a political movement, whether it's a politician, identify good people. Whoever you think are reasonably decent, and they are there. Sachin Pilot is a nice guy. At least his value systems are reasonably decent. So there are lots of good people across the politics. That's a good way for an MBA person to get engaged politically. And then over a period of years, when you get 5 years, 6 years, you work on weekends and all because you need to earn a livelihood. You probably would get that one break which will happen. That's an easy way out. The other way to struggle is, pick up a conscience and work, but it's tough. If you've got a job and all that, it's not easy. Some of you go into not-for-profit sector, but it's also again difficult to crack the political system because the political system depends on political parties. You need to have some kind of a political party support to fight elections. Till they get rid of polling agents. The day they get rid of polling agents, I think you should be able to crack it. But it's going to take time because a lot of political parties will object to that. So I was telling you about my struggle for 15 years. Knocked on doors, tried to convince it. But the question is, if you keep trying, and it's again lessons from Jim Collins, Good to Great. You see, if you keep trying, and if you hold that one vision, that's all I keep saying. I said I don't have any exceptional talent, honestly speaking, and I'm not being unduly humble, I'm being genuine about what I say. If you keep trying, someday, and it's like the flywheel which he uses in the book to explain that, keep pushing the flywheel day in and day out, and then it starts revolving, and someday, you keep seeing it moving at 60 RPM, then 120, 280, and then suddenly you see that RPM moving very fast. So it happened to me. I'm jogging in the morning, and I've been making these desperate political attempts to fight these elections, and everybody looks at me so sincerely, and then don't give me the ticket to fight. So I'm jogging, and then I get an idea that, listen, let me get politically involved in Jharkhand by speaking to Mr. Marandi and saying, listen, I can do a lot of work for you in Delhi. Prepare notes, see what are the mining policies, etc. Because I'm good at some of this stuff. And I run a company, so I have reasonable support. So I told Mr. Marandi, I rang him up and said, sir, you're one of those few honest people in the state. So let me support you. So he said, good idea, let's do it. And then he said, but you need to join the party. I said, fine, I'll land up in Ranchi. And we joined. There was no discussion on elections, honestly speaking. I knew the election was around the corner, to be honest with you. But that was not in the agenda because somehow or the other, by then I lost a little heart into this whole process of cracking this animal of fighting an election. And then winning it is again a difficult. So I went and met him, and then we started discussing, and I told him upfront, listen, it's not, and he told me upfront, listen, there's nothing to do with the Jamshedpur election, because the Jamshedpur elections we are not going to fight. Because JVM was not going to fight the Jamshedpur election, because it was Congress who was going to fight the elections. And that was what was agreed upon, and I was happy. I was going to do some work. My wife was very happy because, I was not getting involved with politics. She was delighted, absolutely. She said, it's good, you should do work like this, you should do analysis. Numbers, that's the thing she's very happy about. So, and then I got in and we were discussing, and I joined the party and we were discussing, and so I go back. And I come with 2 sets of clothes. Okay? Because I said, listen, I've come to join JVM. I got my jogging shoes, everything else, and I'm going to do it on Saturday, Sunday, join on Sunday, go back to Delhi on Monday, and I'm happy. And then Mr. Babalal Marandi said, stay back on Monday, so I stay back. So on Tuesday, we are discussing it, and suddenly they said that, the Congress guys and the discussions are getting a bit haywire and all that. And he says, why don't you stay for a few more days? So I said, fine. You know, what to do, how to clear your road and all that. And then the government of India announces the election. So I'm in Jamshedpur doing some work, you know, meeting with the rest of the guys saying how to make evolve a strategy for the next JVM election in Kolan region, which is 6 assembly seats. Then I get a call and Mr. Malandi says, listen, I don't know if you're going to fight. Give me a couple of days, but I think we should fight. So I said, why? You know, he says, no, I think it's important. So I said, okay. We fighters doesn't mean I'm going to fight, by the way. He said, we're going to fight. And then this discussion went on, and I think at whatever side at the highest levels, and then I get a call and says, listen, you're going to fight. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried fighting elections without money. It's genuinely very... So then, what troubles me, the first thing is I'm not delighted I got a ticket. I'm horrified. Then I need to sell my house here. Because there's no other way in which I can raise that money. Then I start listing down, you know, I got this matrix pad, I carry it everywhere. You know. I started making the list of people who can give me money. All friends from, you know, childhood, school, guys who I never spoke for the past 30 years. Suddenly, you know, somebody I've been with, you know, nice to connect with you. And so I started doing this stuff and then preparing. And the election teaches you a lot. It teaches you, but one thing I understood in this election was that one is that the people genuinely want, the country is changing because they accept and are able to understand genuineness. We take the Indian voters, see during the campaign, Mr. Ramurthy is here, I never promised them anything, you know, it's the craziest election. Never promised them roads, never promised them electricity, never promised them anything. I just promised them 3 or 4 things which I could do. I said I promise over my dead body that I'll remain honest, which is in my control. I said, I promise to see you every 3 months, which is in my control, you know, I can control that. And I promise that I'm going to do everything possible to get the below poverty line survey, possible. Hunger strike, anything else to be done, you know, whatever is necessary, to get the below poverty line survey done in a year's time. Okay. These were 3 promises, very simple. And I was saying, and the people accepted it. But what happens is, this is interesting, okay. All those people like you, you know, which I call the, and no offense meant, okay, because I come from that, the circuit house, belly club culture, right? The circuit house, belly house club culture, hey, look, Ajay Kumar, no chance here. 4th, 5th. And I started believing them, still and God. I never thought I had a chance because I'm living in circuit house. You know. You need to believe that, right? And all these armchair experts, you know, sitting in there and saying, listen, you know, this analysis, they did some back of the envelope calculation. See how management can be wrong. So they did this, everybody of them, 4th, 5th, and actually you don't get money because they don't believe you'll win. And that really hurts because I thought they'll give money because I was a nice guy. Not because whether I won or lost, but then, you know, it's a great lesson in life. That there are very few, you know, when you believe the people you have friended for so many years, and lots of them in the, you know, in the Rotary clubs and the belly clubs, etc., who have genuinely helped, not because I should have helped, but because I was doing my job. So they did this calculation, you know. The lotus seems to be better, and the hand is stronger. And the comb has got, that is my party symbol, has got no chance. You know. So that was the analysis, all right. So I went to a very famous main newspaper on the 20th. And this newspaper editor is sitting in front of me. He looks at me and says, "Aapko kya ho gaya? Achhe reputation the sir aapka." So I said, "Boliye sir, kya hoga?" He says, 20,000. So I thought I'd lose by 20,000. He said, no, you'll get 20,000. So I said, okay. The number of guys I was listed in the money list was nearly 20,000. Those guys are not going to vote. I mean, that's pretty sure. And I'm really thoroughly depressed. And I go to the second newspaper guy, and they also look at me and say, boss. But what's happening when I go to the villages and in the towns and the people is, whenever I went, the boys and girls will do like this, you know. That's the comb here. They're combing their hair. So I couldn't figure out, you know, everybody seems to be combing their hair, and this guy's saying 20,000 votes. So there's a disconnect between what the people are communicating. Now you can get a big crowd and still lose elections. You know, you can get very, very huge crowds and say, wow, you know, so I was, and I've never been a politician. I've never been a public representative. I have no clue on what had happened. So I just had no clue. So then they said that आपका press management बहुत खराब है, and I'm already depressed. I go to Patanda and that day it is raining cats and dogs, and I don't know if you've been to a place called Patanda. Right? Have you been on the road to the cutting and all that? It's genuinely good for spinal flexibility. So I go on that road and I'm crazily traveling, and it's pouring cats and dogs, and I'm meeting even 2 guys in the rain here, 3 guys in the rain. I'm giving my spiel, you know. And these guys looking at me strangely, you know, this guy talking on and on. And 3 guys, 4 guys, Lion Hotel, and it's raining, you know. So I get into this small tea shop and 4 guys quietly drinking tea. And then suddenly they listen, one guy saying, why I should vote, you know, they should vote for me. And so it goes on and on. And I slogged that day, met lots of people, and I come back. One of the opposition candidate crosses me, and he just inaugurates a small office, cuts a fita, and he goes back. So next day paper, I'm hoping, you know, they'll cover me. So there's this small photo, you know, you can't even make out it's me. It says, Ajay Kumar visited Bora. And this guy, he's got a full page saying, Tufani Yatra hai. So then they tell me, you're managing press badly. So I understood what is badly. See? So I called my team, and my team is interesting, okay? My back-end team was all MBAs. No, but good. The good part was, they had no clue on politics. So they were good, seriously speaking. And the good part with that whole thing was, I had Vijay, who was from Xlri. I had all these backroom guys who had no politics, but who just understood, who were genuine, and who could analyze, and they started saying. So we had a war room meeting, and I said, what are we going to do? So we did an analysis and said, okay, let's go up to the press and say, listen, you cover us genuinely, and cover us if you think it's worth it, but don't start doing it, because it's an issue of money at the end of the day. It's how much of money you're spending, how much is money. But somehow help comes to strange ways, you know. One guy walks in and says, listen, I'll give you, support you on putting up all these hoardings and everything else, and something happens during that time. We had some little extra money. They understood how bad we were, how malnourished we were in terms of resources. So what they did was the press started really understanding. Okay. So they started supporting us with that minimal budget. And then I started seeing that, okay, the coverage was not positive, but it wasn't negative. I mean, you know, it was, I can say today, you know, balance, sort of. So then it started picking up and picking up and picking up, and slowly. And I have a few guys in the intelligence bureau, so they came and said, you know, you're going to give a good fight. The last 2 days, and that's the interesting part. I want the business students to understand. This is a perennial human disease, you know. To blame success on a single event. And it's an epidemic across the world. Suddenly guys say, boss, you know, you won because the environment changed 3 days back. And that's the biggest bunkum here. Nothing changes 3 days back. People were just fed up for so many years listening to so much of nonsense. You know, I keep telling Mr. Munda whenever I catch him on the golf course, because he's a golfer and I'm not, and I make a point to tell everybody that. The issue that the people were right in the beginning, so nothing happened. See, we, in business or anything else, we try to attribute, I don't know if it's true with all of it, I hope it's not true, but by and large, it's very convenient in life to attribute success to a single event, you know. And it's convenient, because it exonerates us from responsibility here. Oh, he was lucky, you know. 3 days back, the hawa changed. Same thing happens with successful people, successful companies, and that's a lesson we need to understand. So irrespective of it, and then I realized what actually helped us was, one was communicating. Maybe I worked in Jamshedpur, so it helped a lot, so there was a certain amount of genuineness and equity in that. Other one was a desperate election campaigning on motorcycle, foot. We campaigned for 18 hours a day, 19 hours a day, motorcycle, foot. I mean, I never used to wear this gamcha, but people thought it was a style statement. Believe me, it was to wipe off sweat. Yeah. This gamcha and all that. They think it's that, they told me, well, you look smart in that gamcha and all. I said, oh, that was to wipe out sweat. I never sweated so much in my life. But that is what the campaign mechanism, reaching out to people, touching them, speaking to them, genuinely sitting with them, asking them, talking to them, and giving them, and then speaking to them and telling them what you want to do, how you want to do it, why you want to do it. And people, when they overrate or underrate the common Indian's thinking, there is a chance. See, I'm from Karnataka. Okay, I'm not from Jharkhand. I'm not a local chap. I go and fight election in Jamshedpur from a party which has just been formed 4 years back. We have no money, but we have a lot of heart. Believe me, we fought as if it was a war. All leaders landed up, all colleagues landed up, and that was brilliant about it. And that's why I keep saying that whenever you underrate passion, commitment, you're making the biggest mistake. There's nothing else to replace fire in the belly. We really fought this election with no money, seriously speaking. But we had all the leaders staying in the Rajasthan Seva Sadan. The top guys stayed with 3 guys in one room, 4 guys in one room, common toilet. Guys who were ministers earlier, guys who were MLAs earlier, everybody was walking around. I had the easiest job of campaigning, but we fought it without resources, but we fought it a lot of hard with minimal resources. We used it, well, I'm not saying we didn't, but to a million. So that's critically important, I guess. To do anything with commitment, passion, and it is transferable. The Indian electorate, and by and large, is disillusioned. And it's important to, connect. So, that's my story, the 15 years of, believe me, unsuccessfully knocking and trying and trying. And so, if somebody says about, that you made it into the parliament, believe me, it's been a, it's like what this famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky said, right? I don't know if you know this quotation of, anybody heard of a guy called Wayne Gretzky? Very famous ice hockey player. One of the legends of hockey like Pele. So Wayne Gretzky was asked, that, how come you scored so many goals here? So were you the best player? He said, no, I was not the best player at all. There were guys who were much better than me. But the problem was they never took a shot at the goal. They always waited for the perfect time to hit. And it never comes in. And it's eerie, and I'm not telling you, it's eerie when you start thinking, like I'll tell you, just before this election, I picked up this book called Lynchpin. I don't know if you've read this, Gordon said. And it's got one critical statement which says, ship the idea. Ship it, do it. So when I got this ticket, and I was very nervous here, so suddenly this Gordon set is banging on my ears. Say, what's going to happen here? You're going to lose, right? It's not going to be fatal. I can always say, my CV, he fought the Jamshedpur election. Yeah, a lot of guys have it on the CV now. It's not a bad thing to happen here. So I said, yeah, that's it. So do it, for the young guys, irrespective of whatever it is. And keep trying for it. And you need an independent source of income. I definitely, when I resigned from the Indian Police Service, you won't believe it. Both of us, husband and wife, we were class 1 employees. I hope it's not mine, I supposed to drop. No, it's not mine. Oh shit, it's from the bag. Sorry. I'm sorry for that. Sorry. So that's it, the intent is, but my last plea to these, one is, you must get politically involved. It is mandatory for you to get politically involved. For the simple reason is, that you can't sit back and say, oh my country, the vote is bad and everything else. Because if you guys don't get involved, then it's very unfair to expect, some poor guy in, in the remotest corner of this district or Jharkhand or any other part to, change this country. So it's important that wherever I get a chance, whether it was a JNU, my request to young minds is, get politically involved, irrespective. I'm not asking all of you to start fighting elections, because then, I might lose, you might not be good for me, right? But seriously, but get involved in whichever way you can, in small way. The other part is you need to have an independent source of income. You cannot have ideas or empty belly. So when the political system throws out leaders, why do you think they're so desperate to make money here? Because they've been so much, on vitamin deficiencies for so long. They're really starving. That is why it is important that you can have values if you're financially independent. But I want to warn this, you guys, why you guys also should be involved is one important thing. In the 1950s, the political class, was genuinely engaged in I told you about how corruption was, but I'll tell you about the economics. In 1950s, the political class was genuinely interested, Ram Manohar Lohia and all these people were genuinely interested, irrespective of the beliefs again. The 60s and 70s, the politicians started supporting businessmen, small businessmen. In the 80s, the corporations came in, big money. In the 19s and 20s, politicians have become businessmen. And that is the biggest danger to the country. The Praful Patels of the world, Sharad Pawars of the world. You look across both sides of the aisle. And that is my biggest fear. When you see Rajya Sabha, when businessmen, I'm not against businessmen. I don't believe that. Like Naveen Jindal is an exception in terms of certain ways and all. I don't know. But I definitely believe. But then political family respect. But when politicians have business interests and become businessmen, it's the worst thing which can happen to the country. I'm not saying professionals. Because when you become business, how many of you have seen this movie called Capitalism, A Love Story? You've seen the Michael Moore movie, right? And a large part of the lessons is that the regulators become businessmen. And you know the story about the prison. You remember the story about the prison, where they outsourced the prison system to the United States. Are you aware of that story? In the United States, in one of the states, in the southern states, they outsourced the prison. Okay? They said, listen, great country, they outsource everything else. So they said, let's outsource prison. So a group of guys with a judge outsourced the prison system. Then the company which was running the prisons started influencing the judges to keep kids in jail longer because they get paid by the length of the stay. So these girls who are in prison in high school who just wrote a nasty letter to the principal for 2.5 years. Seriously. And that is why, even if capitalism is one of the most efficient system of allocating resources, it's not the most efficient system in the house of the people. That there should be no role of capitalist sitting because then the interest of the capitalist is paramount over the interest of the people. It may be an efficient system, I'm not underlying it. But definitely crony capitalism is not the most efficient system. You and me have got no chance, boss. You can't set up a steel plant, believe me, you can't. You'll not get the coal mining rights, you have no chance. You might be Xlri and you will do your PhD in the Harvard and all, boss, you've got no chance. So it's important, it's an efficient system. I myself am a firm believer to a reasonable extent, free market with regulations to a certain extent. Because at the end of the day, the interest of the people. And the last, I'll tell you, why is this dissonance, which is important, a slightly disconnect, but why is there a dissonance in the political class with this Anna Hazare movement, you need to understand. It's what has happened is, that the politicians get the votes from the poor, and the money from the rich. So these middle class guys, you're actually a waste of time. Seriously, serious waste of time. You call seminars and talk to, and all this stuff you'll ask. But genuinely you have no impact. What then has now happened is, with this liberalization and this narrative and all this middle class has suddenly started coming up. And to a large extent it is growing very fast, even in the rural areas. And political class never went to the middle class for votes there. So that's why they're reading this whole movement wrong. It may not survive the way we believe it will. I don't know. I have no clue. I hope it does. But just imagine it doesn't. But the fact that there will be other movements and it is a precursor to a lot of other stuff happening in the country, that's what I believe in. I may be wrong. That's my understanding of people's, sociological movements. So that is why they disconnect. When I sit in the Lok Sabha and I see all these leaders, veteran leaders, they're not able to understand it. They're not able to understand this girl from Dwarka with a candlelight and all. They say, yeah, McDonald's jaane wale log hai. Not understanding that in the rural areas also, because of Narega, a guy's got motorcycle. There's a tremendous amount of, there's a reasonable amount of wealth slowly trickling. I'm not saying it's great, but it's trickling. So that's why they're getting the movements wrong. Because the politicians never came to the growing middle class. And the middle class is not your definition, I'm talking about even people who have minimal assets like a motorcycle. I would come in the definition. Because if you got a cable TV and a motorcycle, and you know what's interesting? I told my wife, and my wife is again, she's become middle class, okay? And she's a civil servant. We are driving in this car, going towards to catch the Rajdhani. Because I don't know if you know, one of the perks for being a member of parliament is you get an AC first class ticket free. Any number of times. This is awesome. car to the railway station and it's raining, and once you're a public representative, somehow your eye is sharper, you know. You're more sensitive to stuff. So my wife is looking around and, you know, she's seeing the GK2, and I see this little hut at the traffic light near the Majida Hospital. Some of you are from Delhi and who know the Alaknanda area. And I say, did you see that? She says, no. I said, that guy had a cable TV, yeah. That guy in that hut had a cable TV with a running on inverter. How did he hook up to the battery? I can't figure out where he was getting it from, you know, probably Majida or something. But so I said, these are the changes which are happening. And the political system is not able to see it. So this is what I keep telling the people at the Central Hall when I meet them. And I said, boss, you guys are not noticing it. We are becoming slowly. In the next 30, 40 years we'll become. It's going to be a very different country. You know, there will be ups and downs. But the fact is that the middle class is going to increase. But the fact is that the poverty lines are going to decrease. And then when the middle class is coming, the kind of leaders which will be similar will be guys who come from the people in the class right now. I hope so. And the last but not the least is, one thing which pains me whenever I see well-off people is that you need to be socially engaged. You need to every time remind yourself that you're so damn lucky. Seriously, seriously lucky. You know. And if you're earning lakhs and lakhs, you can genuinely sponsor. I'm not being, you know, it's not a World Vision, what you call, campaign or anything else, you know, to sponsor a child. But I want you all to step in, because once you start donating money with certain aspect of your income, I don't know whether it's going to benefit the other person. I have no clue. But it's going to benefit you a hell of a lot. It will make you a better manager. It will change your perspective. Believe me, the day you start giving away, you will genuinely start becoming better. Because it really builds the change which comes in. And I'm saying it after, you know, I'm 48 years old. I've seen many more summers than all of you. And I'm saying it because it's been a long journey, how we make mistakes. And you know, there was a time when I was a civil servant where we were genuinely short of cash. I mean, we were both the husband and wife. When I resigned, we had $3,000 in the bank. And I'll tell you something very interesting. I joined Tata Motors. I go to Tata Motors in Bombay to join, and Mr. Tata gives me this letter. And I look at it and say, he says, is it okay? I said, yeah, it's okay. It's nice. It's very nice. I'm delighted. Because what I'm earning, it's twice that amount, you know. So I said, wow, you know, I'll have money to save. And what I was earning was, I think, closer to $70,000, $80,000 in 1996 or something per annum, which was very minimal. And it was nearly a lakh, I guess. Excluding the perks, so you don't have to look at me like, you know, I'm from the third world, but so with a lot of perks, okay. And I'm pretty happy. And I look delighted, and I go to President Hotel, and I've never stayed in a 5-star because, you know, that's the perks for all these corporate people. Mine was Circuit House and all those beats and government guest houses. So I go to President Hotel, and I'm just freaking out on the ambience of the room, and, you know, switching channels and all that. And they said you can eat whatever you want. So I'm pretty happy about it. I'm looking at all this stuff. And in the night, I get up, you know. And I said, let me have a look at the letter again, yeah. I'm so delighted. You know? And I read the letter and I say, look, something is wrong here. Because what I thought was yearly, it was actually monthly in that letter, you know. So now I'm not figuring out. So I ring up my wife, I swear. I ring her up and I wake her up in the middle of the night and say, boss, you know, Veena, there's something wrong here. I see that it is monthly. She says, well, generally it must be wrong. I mean, which idiot is going to pay you so much? So I said that, okay. So I read the letter again. But I said, boss, it must be something here. You know, it says monthly. She says, and she's a bureaucrat. So she says it's a typical typo. So I said, okay. So I get depressed and all. I go back to bed. And all. Next day, I wear again, you know, my shirt and trousers, and I engage in a tie, and I go to Tata Sons, Tata Motors, and there is this guy called Visti Banerjee. Visti later on became the head of Alstom Global in HR. Wonderful guy, Parsi guy. So I go up to him sheepishly and say, you know, Visti, I have an issue. He said, you're not happy? This is how you negotiate for better pay, right? So I said, no, I'm pretty happy. I'm happy, but you know, this number. So he says, is it wrong? So he thinks I'm unhappy because the number is small. And I'm trying to figure out that, listen, how do I tell him that, you know, and I shouldn't be looking more anxious about it. So I said, is this correct? So I said, listen, this is what I calculated. So he looked, and he said, you're correct. So I said, this is monthly, right? He said, yeah, it's monthly. So I control my... I walk seriously out of Tata Sons and, with sedate steps out of it. And look very, what you call distinguished and all. And then when I reach the hotel, everybody scream my head off because I've never seen that kind of money. So that's how it was. Over the years, the money has always followed, which has been much, much more than what I need or deserve, seriously speaking. I've never ever felt that I run this business called Max Neiman. We are one of India's largest drug research, drug discovery companies. We are around 700 doctors. I've always felt that I got salary more than I deserve or I need, and I mean it. And the strange part is that whenever I felt so, I've always got paid more. The boss keeps giving more. So it's a good reason to keep feeling miserable and unsuccessful. It really helps. And I'm serious. And if you remember the lessons, and the last I'll close it with the lesson from Jim Collins' Good to Great, is what is important for young people is that you perennially believe that you'll succeed in the end and you'll prevail, but you always feel that you're still not good enough. It's one fundamental critical success factor, that you always should hold this vision wherever you do, whatever you do, that you will prevail in the end. But today, you're just not good enough. If you're able to hold these two contradictory views in your mind, the world is your oyster. I'm serious about it. Because, and I don't know if you remember the dialogue by Darwin Smith when he was asked, the chief executive of Kimberly & Clark, when he was retired, made the biggest corporate transformation in the history of business. When he transformed Kimberly & Clark, one of the biggest transformation stories. When he was asked this story, that how did you do it and why did you do so well? He says, it's strange. I always was trying to be good enough for the job. Now here is a guy who brought one of the biggest corporate transformations in the history of business, Darwin Smith. He took the stock price, I believe, if I remember, from the 1970s, hovering around $2 to over $98 or something, if I remember the charts from the book. And he says in the last days in office that I was only trying to be good enough for the job. And that's the trait perennially across. If you see Mahatma Gandhi, you see Nelson Mandela, they always keep looking back and wonder that why did they become successful? And that's a strange thing if you see across the people, across the most successful people. I know I bored you like hell, okay? So I'm going to finish off with three stories of three people in life who have taught me a lot of lessons. One was when I was doing in school, in medicine. There was a guy called Raghu. Raghu was a lower middle class government employee's son. He studied in the Delhi Tamil Association School. I don't know if anybody has studied there. And we were the public school guys, you know how the public school guys are. Some of you are from the public school as well. Anybody from the boarding public school kinds here or no? Anybody from the Doon school kind of, Mayo kind of crowd? Here, nobody? Okay. Or if you're not, yeah, but I was from those, I was put in a public school. So the public school guys have got the air on them, And I don't know if if you've cracked the exam in the first time, then you have the swagger here. No, Xlri first shot. Yeah. How old are you? What is there an age limit? There is an age limit, right? How much can you? What's the maximum outer limit? No age limit. Okay. So if you're slightly older and get into MBA, the young guys look at you as if So yeah, come on, you do it, right? So we were the first attempt Jipma guys, okay? And there were three guys from school, Hyderabad Public School, 8, 9, 10th rank or something. So we had the swagger, And Raghu was 4 attempts here. 4 attempts, come on. 12th, first year BSc, second year BSc, third year BSc. So we would look at him, as if he was a Neanderthal and say, what's the problem? Why are you into Jipma and all? And Raghu would keep telling me, boss, I'm going to be the world's best trauma guy. We would look at him and say, boss, hey Raghu, control your ambitions here. You're destined for Chingalpet here. Tindivanam. Anybody from Tamil Nadu? Tindivanam, Chingalpet Medical College is your upper limit here. Okay. And Raghu would keep saying this. He never attended a single dinner in his 5 years of medicine because he couldn't afford it. He didn't go out. He only had a single pair of football shoes because he liked playing, and it was passed down from somebody else. And he slogged and slogged. I fast forward. 4 or 5 years back, I'm the CEO of this company called Max Neiman. I'm in touch with Raghu. I know he's doing well. But you don't know because you try to deny that, hey, how can he do well, But I know he's doing well, but you filter it off, He writes a lot of articles, he speaks all over the world. So I ring him up and say, from New York, I'm catching a flight to a place called Cary, where we have an office in North Carolina. And Raghu is in Buffalo. So I said, Raghu, I'm on my way back to JFK, and then I'll try to get to Buffalo, catch a connecting flight. No, I can't see you this time. I wanted to speak to you. He said, hey, listen, you should call me, I will come and pick you up. I said, come on, Raghu, yeah, you can't drive so long and all. No, he said, I will send you my plane, yeah. That's a lesson in humility. And he still calls me a friend despite this 5 years of, writing him and everything. Second lesson, and it's very interesting. I studied in a school called Hyderabad Public School, and there were 12 in medicine, biology, and 12 in maths. In that class, one guy didn't want to go into IIT. He was crazy, he wanted to be a civil servant, not me, because there was somebody else who was crazy. I was not clear what I wanted to do. That was the math section. In the biology section, there were 12 of us. Out of 12, 10 got into med school. In the IIT side, one guy didn't want to, so 10 guys got in and one guy didn't get in. It's a crazy school those days, everybody. And maybe because it was the period of time, it was an elitist school, we had access, whatever be the, the reasons, but it was crazy that everybody could get in. They had access to tuition, whatever it is. So 10 guys got in, one guy didn't get in. One guy who stayed with me. His name was Shantanu. He was my roommate and everything else. I meet the Shantanu guy and I come from Jipmar for the school get together, and he's an Osmania, Osmania engineering. So the Jipmar IIT guys look at him like this, with slit eyes and say, hey, Shantanu, back of the line. Seriously. So Shantanu and me go out for dinner and says, Ajay, I'm never going to be in this position in my life again. And he seriously tells me, he's 18 years old, both of us are sitting in this Irani cafe in Hyderabad Public School outside the bridge. Those days they had this Irani hotel having this samosa, this keema samosa. Still remember, and those 2 rupee green pastries, which some of we found very tasty. It was caked and pretty stale, but it looked great those days. So we're having this stuff and we're eating, and he's telling me this, and seriously, I still recollect this because he keeps telling me this. So I'm in touch with him, and then we're good friends. He goes to the States, sets up a startup, and starts, and is one of the guys who owns the patent for the Photoshop, right? His company gets bought over. And he goes up the hierarchy, becomes general manager, vice president. Today is the chairman of Adobe. The only guy who didn't get into IIT. The only guy. Every guy in that class did so much worse than him. Some of them work for it. Seriously. No, some of my classmates work for it. I'm serious. Shantanu Narayan was the only guy. So the most unlikely guy to make it as chairman of Adobe Global. And whenever he comes to Delhi, I bring him home. Because I want my kids to hear him. And he says the same stuff. He says that as long as you fundamentally believe that you can hold on to the vision that you want to get. And he says all this, and he thanks all of us because he said, you guys were so nasty to me. I said, I'm going to keep you guys' mouth shut. I said, listen, we did a good job. And the last guy is as interesting. When we were in school, there was this guy, I don't know if you have been in school where they read the Indian news, world news, and also we had this very serious assembly where we used to have Indian news, sports news. World news, Indian news, sports news. And only the half-pant fellows will read the sports news. The news, because below 8th standard was where the guys would read the news. You get my point? After you wear pants, you're not supposed to do this dumb stuff like reading news and assembly. You're senior, you look at those guys. One guy kept reading the news till the 12th class, yeah. So he was like a butt of jokes, yeah. Hey, what's up, Even kids ragging him, 7th class guys, what are you reading sports news, So I meet this guy, and I'm intrigued. He's 3 years senior, and he's a good quizzer, and I'm reasonably okay in quiz, and we used to quiz a lot, and debate and everything, and the guy was good. He was a good speaker and all, but I thought he was a bit of a strange guy, So I went up to him and said, boss, Harsha, what's your problem here? So he said, hey, listen, Ajay, I like it here. And Harsha, if you sit next to him, he's sitting on the dining table, he'll start giving a commentary here. I swear. Now the headmaster puts his food in his mouth, he's chewing. He keeps talking stuff like that. Crazy guy. He passed out from school, he did his undergraduation, did his MBA from Ahmedabad. That was Harsha Bogle. Harsha Bogle was my senior who everybody ragged. And he only had one passion, was sports. And irrespective of everybody ragging him, I want to tell you something very interesting. When Sunil Gavaskar came to our school, I was in the 7th and Harsha was in the 10th. Sunil Gavaskar was staying at Banjara Hotel. Harsha Bogle cycled 15 kilometers just to get his autograph and talk to him. And everybody used to think, what's wrong with this dumb guy? But today, everybody else, other day my sons came and told me, Dad, you must be pretty well important. I said, why? You know Harsha Bogle, yeah? That's so much for all, ego, seriously. So that's why I keep telling guys. I've seen it in my own self. I've seen it with throughout my life. People who we would bet as never going to make it were the guys who did it. And that is the strangest part of life. That it is not your DNA. It's in your DNA, I guess, but at the end of the day, there's so many more things which is... So that's why I keep saying. And the basic DNA in all of them were the ability to hold on to the vision they get it. All of them. And I look back and I tell my children, and I keep telling young people like you, hold on to the vision, whatever you have of yourself. It's important. If you don't have one, maybe you'll get one sometime later. But please get it fast. Seriously, because it's not, it takes time. Get it, and then always push yourself. I've seen all these three people, Raghu, and it's a personal experience. And if you ask me, I've done so many things. I played football, Santosh Trophy. I did, this quiz time and all that. And when people tell me this stuff, believe me, I say you should never do this stuff. I'm not again being humble. I hate these multi-talented people. No, seriously. Myself, and with these skills to do different things. Play football, debate, and then you're very popular with the whichever gender you belong to. But it's not worth it in life here. I'd rather be born a hedgehog than a fox. And I'm in the middle of a life where I'm trying to mutate into a hedgehog. I'm a PhD in foxology, if you ask me truthfully. No, I'm serious. I'm actually a PhD in doing so many different stuff. And that's not good. I look at Harsha Bogle, I look at Raghu, I look at Shantu Narayan, and I keep telling young people, don't make the mistakes I've made. You can get lucky once or twice. I've been singularly fortunate to be lucky very often. But it's just not that's the way the game plays. And I keep telling young people, find one thing which you can become the best in the world. It is very glamorous to do many stuff. And maybe in politics, the different backgrounds are finally coincident. But one thing I can definitely confess, that I always knew that I'll be a public representative. But that's one thing I need to be honest with you. Right from childhood. And I had not small division, okay, believe me. I used to see myself, Rashtrapati Bhavan has got a 6-door car and all that stuff. I'm serious, but I always had that vision. But how I went through it was very meandrous and, not very intelligent. Seriously speaking. I had that vision, but it went through, a lot of, diversion, not a straightforward. So I don't think I'm the best guy to advise you on career plan. Don't come to me and ask me what to do in life. But I've just been lucky. So in the end, that's the story. I guess I can only share what I experienced and what I know. I'm very grateful for you for being such wonderful listeners, because I'm going to tell my kids tonight, as soon as I finish this lecture, that listen, they were listening to me seriously, because they doubted that. Thank you guys, and any questions I'll be ready to answer anytime, and anything, it's open till yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just 1 second. I'll pass the mic to you.
Dr. Kumar.
Yes.
I'm new to Jharkhand.
Yes.
And when I came down, I've realized that you're known as somewhat of a demigod here.
Okay.
And as the police superintendent, you've been credited to bringing down dangerous criminals. From the outside it looks glamorous, super cop with gun in hand, shoots down. But how was it to face fear? That's the biggest problem that we in the middle class are facing. Fear to step into the system. So, what was your reaction to fear?
So one thing which is necessary in the middle class to step out of fear is to have a wife who works. I'm genuinely meaning it. If I was a single guy who earned, I'm not so sure if I would have done this stuff. I'm very candid about it, because those are limitations. So it's important, one aspect. Yeah, but I've seen it in the cops, and I can't tell you some of the stories because some of the stories are not legal. I'm serious about some of the stuff I faced are not legal, in terms of what I saw in life. But it is the first time when some of this stuff happened, I was genuinely scared because I was in a room where 4 guys got shot and then somebody walked out and said it's over and that kind of stuff. I mean, you're sitting in a room and discussing it and you're talking and everybody's negotiating with a group of criminals and you're thinking something's going and suddenly one guy picks up the gun and shoots all 4 guys dead. So, if you ask me truthfully, yes, I was shit scared. I got shot, I nearly lost my leg, I was always scared. But there is something in the police, in terms of, the one thing I tell you is, it's interesting, when you're into the fight after Sunday, whatever it is, in career or anything else, the adrenaline levels has a way of numbing your, your rational thoughts. So you're not very rational. I got shot, and I was chasing a criminal, and I didn't know I was shot. I felt a burning sensation on my thigh, and I ran after the criminal for next 800 meters. Then when I stopped and when my shoes started making that wet sound, I realized that it was full of blood, and then I nearly lost my leg on that because that was the adrenaline rush. It happened when I was in ASP in Kanapur. But I have this ability to digress, but it's very important for you to understand how education is important, and I'll tell you why, how it's important, and why it's important to read. You just don't know how the dots connect. I got shot. I'm bleeding. I get rushed to the hospital. It's the railway hospital in Danapur. The top surgeon comes in and he looks at me and says, "Hey doc, you're a doc, you know what's going to happen. I can't feel your popliteal artery, I can't feel your anterior tibial, whatever he said, I forgot it. My medicine is pretty bad now, but I can't feel the pulse on the dorsum and all that. So you know what the situation is?" And I'm saying, "Yeah, he said, look, may need to amputate." And he listen, I'm 23 years old, yeah. And he says that it's above the knee because it's just above my, it's closer to my groin and between the knee and the groin. And it's the femoral artery. Walks in a surgeon, a young guy, just passed out from one of those med schools, MS and all. And he says, "Boss, wait, I read an article in Journal of American Medicine." See, read HPR for God's sake, he's going to save us. So he read an article in JAMA about distal limb injuries. And in distal limb injuries in the American Army, apparently they've saved amputation by freezing the body because then you reduce the oxygen and the necessity. Because what is it fundamentally? It's like cryo that you reduce the energy requirements and the blood requirements. But the risk is you can get gangrene or frostbite. Okay, there's a risk. But you actually de-accelerate the whole cellular process. I was ready to try anything out. But I don't know if you've ever, and please don't do that, but had your foot in ice here for 12, 13, 14 hours. It's one of the most bone-numbing pain, I had it for 80 hours, or more than that, for 4 days. To slow down and to actually, so the whole left leg got blue. So they're checking, whether to, remove skin and all that. It's interesting, sitting there and, and your wife thinks you're nuts, doing crazy stuff like that, and the doctor's discussing, which skin to slow off and all that. But he saved my limb. But every time there was, so I think the fear is very natural. You need to de-risk yourself. I mean, it's very, very natural that all of us are fear. I'm scared of the elections after 2.5 years down the corner. I'm working my backside off. I mean, nothing is guaranteed. So I think fear is a good motivator as long as it's balanced with reality. But if you ask me whether I'm scared to make career choices, yeah. Do I do it without thinking? I don't think so. I mean, but the fear is a real element in all our lives. But it helps us to. It helps you to at least de-risk yourself. So it is important. To tell you that we are not scared, no, it'll be a very wrong thing to say. Any other question? Yes, sir.
Ajit.
Yeah.
Sir, you emphasize like one should always try to enter politics or get associated with it.
Correct.
But I think I have an impression, and I don't know how many people have that. Like it's very difficult to read them out.
Sorry?
It's very difficult to read the politicians out, like how to read them out and how to ask them like I would like to. So how easy it is to reach you and ask like I would like to get associated at some point of time because I really want to get associated at some point.
Very easy. Yeah. Walk in 12 number. These guys, Shantanu, ask any of these guys. Walk in, I love to, anytime. And if you need to meet any other politician, I'll help you. Seriously speaking. Again, the important issue is like ship it. Yeah. Do it. What's going to happen? You're going to get rejected a couple of times. But I'll give you my mobile number and this one I actually pick up, so. Some of it I diverted to Mr. Ramurthy, which is, a colleague of mine who works with me. So, but this one I'll give a number which I pick up. But anybody who wants to be involved, any social organization, see, there's a people's movement, there's a very good society for the people's movement. It's got Veda Patkar and all these people. It's important for you to understand the social processes across the country because we're in a very good time and a strange time. You need to put your head into the Narmada Bachao Andolan and the Aruna Roys and very remarkable people. So anybody in this crowd needs any introduction, and if I don't know the person, suppose you want to work with Rahul Gandhi, I'll walk up to him, what will he say? I won't talk to you. That's about it. So that's a promise. So that's cool. That's easy. Yes.
You've held more roles in one life than people have in probably four. Police officer, doctor, CEO, politician. Which is your favorite and why? Which one do you enjoy the most?
No, every one of them, I guess, seriously speaking. If you ask me, I love every one of them. I think I had a great time as a medicine in Jipman. I thought, see, again, I was not a great student, to be honest with you. I know how to crack entrance exams well. No, seriously. So I cracked this entrance exam and I reached Jipman and I see suddenly these guys were 2 brains and all. And so it has been tough. So in medicine, I learned to struggle and slog. I never studied so hard in my life. Because I was competing, it's like imagine being thrown in Usain Bolt and this, Tyson Gray and all that, and you're like Shivnath Yadav, Pocha running in this, in this local race and all that. Just tough. But you push yourself. So that's what I learned in medicine. Jipma gave me the discipline. I met some of the brightest guys I've ever seen in my life. Fantastic guys. Most of my batchmates, teaching profs in Mayo, Baltimore. I mean, they're remarkable guys. In a batch of 50, 48, 7 went to the United States. So the 3 guys who left were, And police was great. Police taught me a lot of things. Police fundamentally taught me something very important. That leadership, is basically to respect things you can't do here. And I'll tell you, when there was a shootout, when I was a young, when I got my President's Medal for bravery, and he told about fear, it's very interesting. We are having this shootout for 8 hours. We had a guy who lost his arm. The bullets are being fired and it's actually like Chambal, okay? We are surrounded by a group of dacoits with 80, 90 people, we are 6 of us. One constable, Ram Singh, in a quiet, pretty village in Dinara, in Danachua police station, Dinara. I still remember this, it's the night of Holi. He puts me on the ground and he covers me with his body. So I say, Boss Ram, what are you doing here? And this is firing going on, by the way. He says, sir, if an IPS officer dies, it's bad for the country. And that's the kind of people you meet. So police was fantastic. And the business taught me, to learn a lot. Believe me, I'm so glad I got into corporate side because it taught me management, Six Sigma, the kind of quality tools and everything. It at least clarified my thoughts on, doing stuff. And then politics is because if you're a public representative, you thank God because every day, I'll give you an example. You have a sprain in your leg and you make your roommate's life miserable. And everybody's asking, boss, how much it pains? And you're really saying it pains. I'm in this dharna at Sakchi Gol Chakra. One poor Adivasi girl lady comes, and she says, sir, I need 2 minutes. So I said, I'm in the dharna. She says, please, I need medical help. So I get up. Her husband is there, and he's got this gamcha on his hand. And he pulls out his gamcha, and the hand is this big here. And there is no skin from here to here because it's some kind of a squamous cell carcinoma, I suspect. And he's not squirming here. And that's the pain which must be a million times more painful than a neck crick I had 2 weeks back. But they don't complain. And when you get him treated, they think you've done a world of good. They can't believe that you're healed. And I want you to remember something. You see, the middle class and the higher income got, one of the biggest tragedy in this country is we become insensitive. And we believe that the poor don't suffer as much as us when somebody dies or they suffer. Why? Because they don't seem to be so much engaged. Not understanding that the poor has got no time for mourning here. The guy has to get up next day and, earn his livelihood. We assume that not earning, because he's earning his livelihood, he doesn't feel the pain. And that's a disease across. So I, think on my stars and I'm glad every day of my life that I got a great job. Every one of them is great. This is the great, right now it is the greatest job.
politician, doesn't he have a conscience? If he has walked through a slum area, can he be as corrupt as you say they are? You know, they.
I don't know. You know, I don't look at politicians as a class themselves. I look at that as, I said that we all walk through slums and we don't see that we can make a difference. So one issue is that we all see it. You know, when I'll give you an example. So I look at the fortunate people of this country first. I say that we need to do something for everybody we can. Rimming out, I'm sure that all these people who are in this classroom can remove 7,000 rupees a year and sponsor a kid in World Vision. It's not difficult. It's actually very easy. How many of us get to do that? How many of us, you know, feed stray dogs? Now you say that no, they should not be. They should be tied and, you know, what do you call it? Or the euthanized or something. But so fundamentally, I believe that we first should look at the way we do it. And the political class, yes. I mean, you know, generally, if you ask me, I myself saddened about what I see. But I also believe that there are some remarkable people who have won 6 times, 5 times, who come to the election process, you know, day in and day out struggle. So in the parliament, I would say they're around, out of the 540 in the Lok Sabha, I would say that there are 150 to 200 genuine guys. So to paint them all in the same brush is not appropriate. But the 300 guys are so bad. But again, they're businessmen who are turned politicians. You see, I'll tell you one thing, and I'm not against, see, I myself have been in the corporate side. Large number of business houses were supporting the most corrupt guy in my election. Because it's convenient here, you get things done. So, you know, when we look at it and when I look at the value system, so it's a very convoluted way, you know, so I find it very difficult. I mean, Praful Patel must be the darling of a lot of corporate houses, you know, who says CSR is a prime responsibility. We believe in ethical India and all that, but, you know, so it's both ways. So it's not, the story is not so simple. A lot of politicians are getting into, sort of businessmen are getting into politics because it's very easy to expand business. Video call. Good example. This Mr. The Reliance guy who got the Rajya Sabha ticket. So these are problems. So, but things will change. I think these guys, the young kids, are smarter. They're just generally more conscious. I got a son who's in the National Law School in Bangalore. So he keeps writing petitions after petition. My wife said, what's wrong with him? He keeps writing letters here. Yedurappa, you're not doing well. And all. My wife keeps saying, what's your problem? Shut up, you know. He says, no, he can't do it and all. Today he rang me up and said, what's the Sadanand Gowda doing and all? I said, what's your problem? He said, the local report is not accepting. I'm going to protest. I said, go ahead, yeah. But the kids are different, that's what I keep saying. I don't know whether I would have done that much. So I think the young guys will do it much more. So I genuinely believe that we are looking for a good time. I have a very, very strong belief in that. You couldn't have got those 20,000 people, I mean, 2 lakh people. I went to Anazares, I went to the ground. Because I know a lot of people there personally, and I believe that what they're doing was at least a struggle to get awareness, you know, and what they did. And I wrote and supported them for the process. Okay. There'll be debate on every way, you know, the hundreds of different views, but at least on the intention, they were not bad. They were genuine about it. So it's a political animal like all of us. But somehow the other, the worst seem to distillate that side. They're genuinely bad. So, yes.
You can go ahead.
Short question.
Yes, sir.
Do you sort of plan your moves and career?
No, in the back of my mind, I know where I'm going. I mean, let me tell you like the career choices I made. Okay. Medicine, because I was a civil servant's son, and when I was doing in the 80s, either you're an engineer, doctor, or you go with the civil service exams. You know, there was nothing like the MBA was still not the. It started picking up in the late 80s, right? But civil servant, middle class background, so I went into medicine because I was not too great in maths, and I said, I'll become a doctor. That's it, great. I wanted to get into the foreign service, you know, so, and I didn't make it. I wrote the EIS exam the first time, and I got into the Indian Police Service. And I had an uncle who was a chief secretary, and I couldn't get into the post-graduation that year because I'd given the exam, so I was 3 months short, so I had to do my internship, right? So I went to police just to have, honestly, a 4 months vacation in Missouri. I swear, no, seriously. My father said they were ties and all that. I said, wow, you know, you can horse ride and all. It's a great 4 months school. I'll prepare for you the PG. I want to be an orthopedician. But then something strange happened. I got posted as an ASP probationer in Bihar, in a place called Rajpur. And then I saw that, you know, the crazy amount of atrocity here. I was totally sanitized by the rest of the country. I had no clue. I spent my childhood abroad. I was in, you know, in a fancy hostel all my life. And then when I came to this real India, I had no clue here that it was so bad. And with small acts of sincerity, I just realized that you can reasonably make a huge impact. So it was a question between, and so I said, hey, listen, this is a good job, I can make people's life better. I always like to do something like that. So I continued as a cop for 10 years. And then after that, I wanted to do an MBA and business degree and do some add qualifications because I wanted to read. And, you know, so I did it. But I always knew that politically, will I be involved? I always knew that. If you ask me today, truthfully speaking, I mean, it's not that this was, right from childhood, I always, I've read all books on Mandela, Gandhi, Kennedy. So those are my favorite, Churchill and all that. So fundamentally, at least on this last part of my career, I knew where I was getting at. The rest of them seem to be, you know, I'm able to connect the dots now. Yep.
So it is always said that to change the system, you have to be in the system. And you have been in the system in the rest of your life. So I would like to ask how challenging it is going to become in politics to bring about the substantial change that you have met when you were a police officer of Patna and Jamshedpur.
It's how you define it, I guess. You know, substantial change. I'll give you an example. Every Saturday, and I'm trying to work with Mr. Ramurthy, is to make it a simple process. Okay. So business degree helps. So business education helps in the sense. Every Saturday when I come into Jamshedpur, I spend one evening with the Basti, the city where the poor people live. You know, because the people in this part of the town are comfortable. You understand the problem. On Sunday you meet everybody. On Monday you spend in the rural area. When we started spending in the rural area in the block, okay, even a simple thing like getting the Gram Sevak, I don't know if you know who is a Gram Sevak or a Rozgar Sevak, is the guy who decides on the Narega projects and all. Now his schedule is not known to the villagers. He doesn't tell them when is he going to come. The simple process of today getting the government to pass on an executive order that it is mandatory for the Gram Sevak and the Rozgar Sevak to put their schedule will bring relief to lakhs of guys. Okay. So I believe that, you know, you can also make, I don't think, and the other problem with young people and all of us is, you know, we try to boil the ocean, so I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to take a small chunk of it, do my best in that. Development projects. But one thing is which is close to my heart, and listen, and that's a serious request, when you're going to get replaced, you know, like next year or year after that, and get those fat salaries, we set up a project called the solar light system, okay? And it's very interesting how it happened. During the election campaign, I got lost, okay, in a left extremist area. Okay? And my friends on the other side will say, listen, he's got friends on the left. I don't know if you know those allegations against me, but one of the allegations is, you know, I'm very chummy with the left extremist. That's the allegation. So I got lost. And the total darkness, and I'm driving through and I reach a village. In the left extremist area is this nice village. This is a village, okay? The roads are bad. But it's got this solar lamp here, the high mast solar lamp, donated by some guy in the Middle East in memory of his father. And the whole village here, no power, but is living on that light here. There are kids reading, there is women sitting there, there are bhajans going on, and it's just changed the village life by a simple 50,000 rupees, 60,000 rupees Tata BP solar kind of stuff. And I didn't pay much of attention during the campaign because, you know. But then I sat down after the results and said, hey, listen, you know, can we light up 1,500 villages? So we're going to do it in the next 18 months. I started with my family members, you know, they stopped picking up my phones. Then I started with my family members and they stopped picking up phones, but we've already reached 100. And I'm going to call everybody. Not students because, you know, but everybody else. And get 1,500 likes in the next 18 months. Now you might think it's not a great systemic change in life, but I definitely believe that it will change the life of 1,500 villages, not significantly, but at least it will banish darkness. But it's not fancy. It's not changing the world, but it's some amount of effort in the right direction. I don't believe that it's going to make a, but I definitely believe that what I saw in that village at that night, if we can bring that amount of happiness, if kids can read, study, if women can sing bhajans, if the village can sit together and start chatting, because there is nothing more humiliating than sitting in the darkness like this, in the evenings. I don't know if you pass these villages at night. They just sit next to a small candle or a kerosene lamp, and they just look at, meaninglessly into, the walls and chat here. And I don't think any fellow citizens in this country or a brother or a sister should have a life like that. So I say that, so that's my perspective. I have a very myopic view of what I can do. I try to do my best. And for you guys, I'm going to fight to, prevent polling agents. Because I'm not sure whether I'll succeed in my lifetime, but by the time you're ready to become a public representative, you can thank me for it. But I'm seriously, that's one agenda which I have to try to do it. So these are how we struggle. Yes?
Oh, we'll have two more questions. This is the one. I'll take one of those three.
Yeah, please.
Sir, before asking question, I must mention that you have been my idol for most of the time, because having been from Bihar,
okay,
when I was studying in class 10, I used to hear about you from my dad, and so it was really delightful for me to have an interaction with you today. Sir, my question is related to, sir, in these 10 or 12 years, a lot many things have changed.
Correct.
Country is improving, new processes are being involved or being brought in. So my question is, like, we see some acts like RTI Act, which has been implemented by kind-heartedness of persons like Arvind Kejriwal. Do you think such a mass movement like Anna Hazare movement will help us in attaining anything in proper? Because I think the way the RTI Act was implemented, it was implemented much in silence. There were some persons who were trying to implement it, and they have implemented it. But it's my opinion that this movement, Anna Hazare movement, has gained lots of popularity, and that's why the government has subsided it. But do you genuinely feel that something will come into the paper, or will Lokpal bill in its truest sense can really take a form?
See, I'm in that where the parliament discusses it. So I have a gut feel. My gut feel is we guys cannot get away not doing it. Even if I think the rabidness is because even Aruna Roy's recommendations are outstanding. And Anna Hazare's recommendations are decent, but not all of them are practical. The second issue is to believe that there's a silver bullet to solve all problems is not going to happen. So those are debates. But walking away from the good Lokpal bill is not possible. At least I think. I don't think they're so dumb not to do it. And definitely there's a lot of pressure. There are guys like us, hey, listen, we need a dharna to stand anytime. We'll stand behind Gandhiji's statue if they don't do it. So I think the time has come that they will do it. The Lokpal bill will come through. I'm quite sure of that. The most important part is to raise the collective consciousness here. See, I've never seen middle class India engaged in, till this time. It's the first time that, kids, with Reebok shoes and, what's the bag they carry, the YGL, that have a sack and all that. I've seen kids like that coming in here, the Lady Shri Ram girls and the Stephen boys, the Hindu college guys, the IM guys and the Xlri kids, and all of you, some people all over there. So it's a great thing to, first time that the young got engaged. So irrespective of whatever that happens, but I believe the Lokpal bill will come. I genuinely believe. And if it doesn't come, then we will agitate. We'll definitely agitate. At least at a personal level, I'll definitely, agitate at the parliament or sit in dharna, whatever it is. Yes.
Sir, we have been to village exposure program in the start of our program.
Yes.
It was a 3-day program. All of us saw the villagers going through all the problems, and there was one fact which I am going to say is the opposite of it. We went to one of the village, people are very well off there, and expect from everyone who goes there that they donate something so that they can enjoy and don't do the work. People there told me that they don't want to grow the crops 2 times a year, and just 1 time a year is enough for them. And so do you think when any of the government representative goes, they want to change the mentality, or just to do the welfare work, or do you want to just donate to the villagers and come back? That's one point. If you are at your level, if you are telling your whole organization to go and help, I think that change of mentality is more important. So
what's your name?
Akshay Jain.
Akshay, can I be a bit brutal? It's okay with you.
Yes, sir, that's fine.
One is it's extremely arrogant to believe that the people don't have understanding to improve their lives. See, we somehow have to think that those guys don't understand. And believe me, when I go, what do you think? Why do daily wage laborers, mothers want to put their kids in English school? What's the single reason why they want to do that? Is to give them good education. They know that English education is liberated. So I want you to understand that when the village does it, these are rarest circumstances. No villager doesn't want to do two crops. I think it's a miss. If you have water and irrigation, they will grow two crops. I don't know how you feel. Today, I'll give you an example. Today I'm at the district level review committee. They don't have power for 35 days, 60 days, 90 days, 2 months. In Baragot, in Gurabanda, in the block, girls who are bright and boys who are bright take arts because the road is so bad that they can't reach their college, and arts doesn't need attendance compulsory, science needs attendance compulsory. And the poor people, the rich, you see my son pays 150 rupees for school bus. The girl in Gurabanda pays 600 bucks to get to school every month. So if she gets sick, right now I'll tell you what happened. I was coming to Jamshedpur and somebody calls me. They said, sir, you have to help this person. I said, what happened? His name is Ravi Prasad. It's his daily life, okay? He sells steel bartan on a cycle from Gachira. 3 children. It was pouring rain like hell for the past 3 days. Father lands up in MGM, single earning person, sells bartan. He goes to MGM, he's serious. Family obviously wants to save the dad's life, takes him to TMH not understanding anything. He's in TMH for 45 days. He dies. The bill is 2 lakhs. When my wife gets sick and it goes to Max Saket, discount galore, yaar. CO discount, government discount. And then finally, they're going to pay me for getting into the hospital. No, seriously. So the poor pay. So we try to get rid of that money. So what I'm trying to say is, it's a very serious issue. It's very, very serious. It's very, very important to understand the lives from that perspective. And why I keep saying is the day we stop. And the last part which I want to be serious with all you guys is, the day you start believing that you're lucky because you're successful because you're competent, you really are signing your death warrant. It's a circumstances of very, series of lucky events which draw it. I'm very honest about it. So never attribute success for competence. There are lots of successful guys who are idiots, and there are lots of brilliant guys who are unsuccessful. Now seriously in life, I see every time, so don't even that. So fundamental issue, I'm sorry because you're a young guy, I can be brutal. It's important to understand that everybody wants to better their life. And the village people definitely are very, very, they really, when you go there, they keep asking me, sir, Angrezi school kab lagega? Mera beta ko Angrezi kab sikhaoge? They all understand the power of English. So it's very important to understand. And the other thing in this country, my driver pays higher school fees for an English-speaking school in his village than I pay for my son in Don Bosco in Alaknanda. So you see the whole system is biased against the poor. Yeah, sorry. Anybody else?
I understand there are a lot of questions pending and a lot of people wanting to ask questions. We'll have this one question over here and through we'll take the meeting forward. We will try and see if we can have a couple of minutes with Sir towards the end of this interaction again.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else?
In the beginning of the session, you mentioned that it's very important to identify good people before you enter politics, or to enter in politics, you need to identify good people. What I have believed over the years and what I have seen people believing over the years is that fundamentally, or the first guiding principle of entering into the politics is that you need to identify a party's ideology that matches with your own value system. Don't you think both should exist as in at the same time, or right, or just it is better to identify good people just to start a career in politics?
Maybe, see, everybody's got a different way to skin the cat. And I've seen all the large political parties. So ideology is a misnomer it's a vote bank ideology. Firstly, we need to be very clear on, at least my understanding of the political landscape. When people take different political positions, it's much to do with the eyes on the vote bank. When they speak on certain aspects, at least a large, and I'm again going to say something which is not popular. The communists, okay, irrespective of the ideology again, are genuine in their hard work. They genuinely do their paperwork well. Now it may be misplaced methodology, okay, because I sincerely disagree with them. I was a student of Federation of India activist for a very long time. Sitaram Yechuri was my president. I went on a lot of dharnas for 6 months during college days. But I totally disagree with the communist system because you get wiser and everything else. So that's a different issue. When you're young, you're always a communist. By the time you've got family and kids and a car, you're a capitalist, right? And then you want to protect it, right? So I look at it, if good people you go to, so that's my understanding, that good people can do less harm than bad people. And political ideology between the Congress and the BJP or Lord is not too different yet. One is left of center, one is right of center. Yeah, seriously. It's slightly left of center and right of center. And then different policies on minority and all is for vote bank reasons. But otherwise the political differences are, have you ever noticed the BJP or Congress disagreeing on economic liberalization or nuclear power? Never. They have never disagreed. On economic issues, they have never disagreed, at least post-liberalization. And why it is important is good people can do much lesser damage, I mean, I believe so. And it's easier for you to launch yourself. You get with these crazy politicians who've got ideology, they'll make you go round and round. No, seriously. I mean, you need to find where you want, or if you believe in your ideology, find a good guy in that ideology. Maybe, But good people is sine qua non. Mandatory. Otherwise, believe me, you're like, like this lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Yeah. All of you guys in this room, you just don't know how bad the system is. I mean, the guys will salivate looking at you. So here comes a, seriously, here comes a, a guy I can take for a ride. You're just sitting ducks here. Because I understand, I see my children and I see, I just say, boss, you throw them into the political system. So all of you are very similar to that. Okay? So it's important to protect yourself by going to good people. At least you won't be harmed. Now I'm very serious when I say this because otherwise you will have no clue on how they will harm you. It's really a bad word. Genuinely, bad. So find good people. And there are lots of good. So I told you guys, anytime in life I'll leave my email. You want to connect with anybody, any politicians you believe, because at the end of the day I see them somewhere in the central hall. What's going to happen? Even if I don't know, I can walk up to them and introduce myself. And one thing, becoming a member of parliament gives you that little respect of, walking up and shaking hands with Rahul Bajaj and saying, sir, how are you? Any response? Otherwise it's difficult. Yes. So I promise to introduce you to everybody, any one of you, and help you through and they have a good system in the parliament now, they call the legislative assistant process. And it's a very good organization. You want to do a summer intern, I recommend the Xlri to do something off a traditional pathway, Do something like get attached to one of the public advocacy groups for a month. Because by the time you are managers, those guys are going to make your life hell. Yeah, seriously. Those green guys, all the and I'm happy about it. They're going to make you environmentally conscious, they're going to make you diversity conscious, they're going to be socially conscious. So you have to balance efficiencies with challenges of environment, diversity, social factors, So it's important. That's what I would recommend. If my suggestion has got some value, but from experience. Okay? Hey, great guys. I really enjoyed myself. I finished my last. Okay. You have another question? No. Hey, thank you so much, for being such wonderful listeners. I really appreciate it.
Said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more and become more, you are a leader. It is indeed an honor to have Dr. Ajay Kumar here with us today. The way we dissected through the concepts of leadership, of politics, of human life and human value was an eye-opener for all of us. We have nothing but admiration for you, sir, as a leader, as a human being, and we would like to present you with a small memento as a token of thanks.
Thank you so much.
Xlri. I thank all of you for being here with us this evening. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.